There has been yet another major Taliban strike in Afghanistan. This time, the militants have targeted the largest United States military base near Kabul. 4 people have been killed in the attack and 14 others injured. This next report brings you more on that.
A major security breach at the sprawling US airbase in Bagram near Kabul. Reports say a laborer wearing a suicide vest blew himself up near the dining area, killing 4 and injuring 14. The casualties were largely Afghan, although they may have included some NATO personnel. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack. It brought back memories of an earlier Taliban attack last December when a suicide attacker riding a motorcycle killed 6 US military personnel outside the airbase. Bagram is among the most heavily guarded US military facilities overseas and is located about 50 kilometers from Kabul. The attack is a demonstration of Taliban power spreading out from its heartland in Kandahar to places like Lashkar-Gah, Tarin-Kot, Mazar-e-Sharif and Kunduz. Even Shia majority Herat is not immune to strikes of the Sunni-dominated Taliban. It's a moot point whether the Bagram attack was linked to Donald Trump's election as US president. What's clear, though, is that a resurgent Taliban is leveraging the lack of clarity in Washington about Afghan policy and the weakness of the Afghan government to destabilize, damage and destroy. Bureau Report, Wion.
On that note, joined in on the broadcast by Syed Nazakat, an expert who's also covered the war in Afghanistan extensively. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on the broadcast. First up, what do you make of the timing of that attack, sir? How significant is the timing coming just 2 days, just a little over 2 days after Donald Trump was elected?
It is. First of all, Bagram is the nerve center of the foreign military establishment in Afghanistan. I have been to that base, and it is the most guarded place in Afghanistan. And if you look at the whole war in Afghanistan, this place was actually serving as a nerve center, and it has been attacked in a way that it actually exposed the failures of this whole Afghanistan war. Like, after 14 or 15 years of the war, the most secure place in Afghanistan has been attacked, and the attacker have been able to go deep inside to the building and do the maximum casualty out there. So it puts question mark on the whole military offensive in Afghanistan. It also clearly says that the shift of the battleground is once again going back to Taliban, which has been actually controlling the southern part of Afghanistan from Helmand, from Kandahar, from Jalalabad. And now we have seen the situation actually turning worse in other areas as well. The Mazar, for example, just 2 days back, the German consulate was attacked in Mazar-e-Sharif, which was considered for a long, safe area till I think 4 or 5 years back. So the timing is also crucial. Like it has happened just, you can say the results were announced in America, but I think it's mostly, it has mostly to do with the situation in Afghanistan, where there are still 10,000 soldiers, American soldiers, NATO soldiers, and they're still yet to decide actually how to eventually finish this war. Because Donald Trump has said actually that it was an American mistake to get involved into this war. And he kind of criticized Obama's policy in Afghanistan. But what he said actually, I think that during his election campaign was that, if he wins the election, he will take a decision whether he will keep the remaining soldiers there or not. So I think that it's going to be a very interesting time in Afghanistan, and then the Taliban, the Afghan government is actually quite concerned about the situation, because they know that if there's a complete withdrawal of even of the remaining 10,000 troops, it means not only about the foreign assistance, military assistance will stop, but it also means the training of Afghan soldiers will actually get hampered.
Right, so as you're telling us, it is indeed a serious security breach of one of the best fortified military compounds in Afghanistan. What message, according to you, does that really give out?
Taliban have done actually a major attacks across Afghanistan. They have attacked every military establishment in Afghanistan. That actually has been a story since the day the military operation, since the day American and NATO invaded Afghanistan, that they were never ever able to have a control on the territory. The foreign troops, now supported by the Afghan military, they were never able actually to secure the whole country from Taliban. From the day one, the Taliban were moving from one area to another area, just trying to do a guerrilla tactics, trying to engage foreign troops. First, they tried to engage British in Kandahar, then they tried to do same story with the American troops there. The story was that the Taliban were never actually defeated. No matter there were 42 best armies in the world fighting in Afghanistan, but Taliban remained in one or other way engaged in Afghanistan. I think that actually put a huge question mark on the whole military offensive in Afghanistan. And I think many people and strategic experts in Europe and America have actually kind of concluded that it was not really the best performance of the foreign troops on a foreign soil, that 43 nation countries are participating, engaged in a military offensive against a guerrilla force, and they're not able to actually defeat them on the ground. I think for some part, maybe 4 or 5 years, Taliban were kind of on a backhand. They were having they took a refuge in Pakistan, they got a sanctuaries out there and all that. But in the last 4 or 5 years, certainly after they knew that the foreign troops are going to be withdrawn from Afghanistan, they started a fresh offensive. I think it was the start of 2008 when the Taliban start coming back. And from that day on, we have never seen actually the Afghan army of control in Afghanistan. Even for that matter, Kabul is not really secure. We have seen attacks on Serena Hotel. We have seen attacks on the president's convoys. We have seen attacks on the gatherings where the president was speaking. And we have seen attacks on the US troops inside Kabul, actually. So this is the message actually is that what the bottom line actually is, the war in Afghanistan is actually once again, the shift is actually shifting towards Taliban, where the Taliban seems to have an upper hand again.
Right, so it will be safe to say, sir, that the security situation on ground has only worsened, and this attack coming again just 2 days after the German consulate was also attacked. The fact is these attacks continue unabated. These are strong indicators of the fact that the security situation on the ground is only worsening.
You know, Afghan government if I ask it another way, the Afghan government is quite clear about the situation. They know they're not going to defeat Taliban, because who are the Taliban for that matter? Taliban are the local people, the Afghans, the Pashtuns. So how are they going to defeat them at the end of the whole war? They know they have to engage them in one or another way. So what the Afghan government has been trying for the last 3 years, since 2013, they have been secretly negotiating with Taliban in Qatar, where the Taliban have been allowed to set up an office. And we have seen there have been 2 rounds of negotiation. And that is what actually is more, quite a conflicting situation in Afghanistan. That on the one side, you're engaged in a war. On the second side, you're negotiating with the same people in a foreign territory. And then we have seen one round in 2013. We have seen another round of negotiation in Qatar between Taliban commanders, the mullahs, and we have seen the chief of intelligence of Afghan army also participating in that, including some officials from America and other people other countries who are involved in Afghanistan war. So we are seeing 2 different directions in Afghanistan. One is of having this secret negotiation in Qatar and trying to find out the solution to the problem. Second is whether Afghanistan army on its own, there are 200,000 Afghan soldiers, but they're not really great trained. They don't have a best equipment, and in the last 2 years we have seen many of them actually rejoin Taliban or left the services. So the question is actually, in the current situation where you have also the key player in Afghanistan, the America, they got a new president who has publicly said that it was a mistake to get involved in Afghanistan, but whose decision whether to keep those 10,000 soldiers remaining in Afghanistan or not, which actually framed the broader policies for Afghanistan. So Afghanistan's situation, once again, actually will not be decided within the country, but the players either in Islamabad or either in Washington.
And extremely worrying, isn't it, that we do see these attacks continuing unabated, and as you're suggesting, the failure on part of the government goes to now tell us that there is a possibility that these attacks will only continue in the time to come with no respite in sight.
For any insurgency, for a military point of view, for any insurgency to defeat it, you need boots on ground. And Afghan army is just 200,000 strong, which is nothing, which is 2 lakh soldiers on the ground. And Afghanistan is a massive, huge country. So that was the one failure actually, that you don't have enough troops to have them on ground. So you can't put bankers, you can't put security checks on the highways and all that. So that gives enough space to Taliban to move from one province to another province. Say, for example, if they want to move from Ghazni to Helmand or Helmand to Kandahar, there is actually no security checks. They can easily go from one place to another place. So that is the one thing which has given Taliban enough space to maneuver and enough space to recruit their people and establish their own small, you can say grounds in southern Afghanistan. And second thing is, it's also unique, if you look at the timing, it's a winter time in Afghanistan. So usually the violence is actually low during the winters because you got snows and all that. But I think this month, May, is one more month where you may see a couple of more attacks, or you may see more offensive on behalf of Taliban in some areas. But December onwards is going to be tough also for Taliban to launch further attacks because of the winter situation. So maybe the one more month is quite crucial in Afghanistan. And we saw a lot of ISIS and we saw a lot of Taliban actually celebrating that Trump has become the president of Afghanistan for different reasons, actually. So it's going to be very interesting. The security situation in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, what's going to happen in Qatar, where the Taliban and the Afghan government is negotiating a deal, and whether Donald Trump will be part of that larger agreement to end a long war in South Asia.
Right, before we let you go, just a quick question also, since you mentioned the ramifications of the new US elections on the situation on ground in Afghanistan. This, like I mentioned at the outset, this attack taking place just a little over 2 days after the US elections concluded, after Donald Trump was elected as the next president. What do you see the way forward being, given the fact that Donald Trump now has been elected as the new president, and you've been there on ground covering the war in Afghanistan also extensively? How do you see things changing now with the new president coming into power?
There's absolutely no doubt within NATO allies that this was a mistake, the way the war was fought, the way the strategies were adopted on the ground. I think French, Germans, Australians, Canadians, everyone agreed that the way the war was fought was not really to the best of the military engagements. And I think that was one of the reasons that one after another, the Canadians started it, the British left, the Germans started moving out. So I think that there's a larger understanding within the military establishment of NATO that this war has to end politically somewhere. They're not really seeing a solution where they can, because they completely failed to defeat Taliban. And they know that the Afghan war is a failure. Afghan war is a big question mark on NATO's capability, actually, because 43 countries were engaged there for 10 years. So now the question again is with the Americans, because it's now their troops, 8,200 or 300 troops on the ground, and they have to take a call on that, whether they will be able to remove all of them, and because that also will mean the training for the Afghan troops will actually suffer. Because these troops, actually, the remaining 8,000 troops in Afghanistan actually are providing training to Afghan army. And if they are removing those 10,000 troops, that Donald Trump decides they're removing those 10,000 troops, that means the Afghan army's capacity building will certainly suffer.
All right, Syed Nazakat, thank you very much for sparing your time and breaking down the ramifications of that attack. We'll, of course, keep breaking down what this really means for the way forward. This attack, of course, coming at a time just a little over 2 days after Donald Trump has been elected as the next president. What is the significance of that attack coming at a time like this? Thank you very much again to our esteemed guests. On that note, we're taking a short break. On the other side, news and updates continue. Stay tuned.